All right. Good morning. How's everyone doing? Karibuni sana. Welcome to the Afriforex Daily Analysis. Good to see a lot of people streaming in into the Zoom meeting. And also you can see that we are live on the other social media platforms as well. Let me just switch this one off. Seems like it's repeating everything that I'm doing. So just give me 1 second. All right. So sorry about that, but hope you guys are well. So like I was saying, good to see that guys are also streaming in on all the other social media platforms as well. So good to see lots of people here. Looking at the manifesto, we see we have guys joining us from all over the country, and also guys from beyond our borders. So we do have guys in Somalia, Congo, UG, South Africa, some in the UK, US. Good to see you all here, and also some guys from the West African region, Nigeria, and also Ghana. We're seeing a lot of activity on analytics, especially on the social media platforms. But we're really glad that you could join us. So John Bogo is my name. I will be your host today, doing the most. Mitch is on a bit of a break today, but he is also here. So he is working in the back office. So in case you do have any questions, feel free to ask them both on the Q&A section and also on the chat box. We will be getting back to you. Remember, in case anything is not too clear, you also can end up watching, or rewatching the webinar again on either of our social media platforms. So we do have YouTube, Facebook, and also on X, Instagram, Telegram. Those ones are just live now, but they will be going off after a bit. So let's jump straight into it, and we'll start off by looking at what we did have on the charts, or what we were watching out for yesterday, before we do end up having a look at what the situation is looking like today. So let me just get the watch list out real quick. Let's see. Seems like it's giving a bit of an issue here. Just give me 1 second. All right, so here we have the watch list. So you can see yesterday, Thursday, the 20th, we're basically watching out to see whether we could get some buying opportunities on the Canadian dollar, the Swiss franc, and the New Zealand dollar. And you can see that right there. Today, there's been a bit of a change, but remember that we did also end up pointing out, especially the Swiss franc pairs. Remember that yesterday there were some news events that were coming out at around 10:30 or there, about some interest rate decisions that were coming out. So that did end up switching things, and we'll end up seeing the strength or the weakness rather that did end up coming in on the Swiss franc pairs. So that's one change for today. And you also can see some of the indices have actually shifted sides. So we'll also be looking at that. So feel free to take a screenshot of that. But also remember, you can also end up getting this information on our social media platforms. You still can end up watching this. So we'll start off by looking at the review of the ones that we did have yesterday that unfortunately are not on our watch list for today. So we'll start off by looking at the Swiss franc pair. So we do have the US dollar against the Swiss franc. For this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. You can see the three regions right there that Mitch had pointed out. So aggressive, conservative, semi-aggressive, conservative, somewhere within this particular area right here. And you can see in the morning, the market did actually end up holding within this region. Of course, it wasn't a really good area to end up looking for your selling opportunities. We always talk about buy with buyers, sell with sellers, and you can see that the market was within some sort of a buyer's region. But of course, once the news events did end up coming in, it's not really something that's surprising in terms of the market jumping to the upside of this region right here. Of course, within a buyer's region, the interest rate decisions were weak, and you can't see that weakness really coming in on the Swiss franc. So for this one, unfortunately, it fell off our watch list yesterday, and of course, moving into today, not really something that we're going to be focusing on. So moving on into the next one, this is the Swiss franc against the Japanese yen. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some sales, some buying opportunities rather. And you can see that this one was within some sort of seller's region at the top right here. Not really a good area to look for your buying opportunity. We did want to see some sort of a pullback, But you can see that also when the news events did end up coming in, and of course, a lot of volume that did end up coming in, and you can see the market pushing to the downside quite aggressively. Unfortunately, also this one did end up falling off our watch list, and moving into today, not really something that we're going to be focusing on. So moving into the next one, this is the euro against the Swiss franc. So for this one, also a currency pair we had yesterday that unfortunately we're not really going to be watching out for today. We're watching out to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities on this one. Similar situation, almost like the US dollar against the Swiss franc. Can't see that the market was down within some sort of a buyer's region. Not really a good time to look for yourselves. And you can see that the market did end up reacting off this aggressively. Hopefully, we wanted to see maybe we could have gotten some selling opportunities within there. Fortunately, we couldn't get the market stopping there, and also somewhere within this region right here. And of course, once the market broke to the upside of this red SNR, unfortunately, there were no trades for us at that point in time. And of course, moving into today, not really something that we're going to be focusing on. So moving on into the next ones, this is some set of Great British Pound pairs that more or less have fallen off the watch list right now. Could have looked for opportunities on this one. But what happened was that there were some GBP news events that have just come out. In fact, that's the reason why the webinar started off a bit late, because we didn't need to figure this out with the team. So you can see green there. The numbers are better than what was there previously. So we should be expecting maybe some strength to end up coming in on the GBPs. But there's also some more news events that are going to be coming out at around 11:30 or thereabouts. So make sure that you do watch out, especially on the Telegram channel. In case you haven't joined, make sure that you do join. There should be a link on the chat box for you to end up joining. In case things do change, maybe during the US session or thereabouts, then that means that the Great British Pound will end up coming to the sell side, and we'll have to mix and match it up with everything that's going to be left on the buy side. So just make sure that you do end up having that in mind. So for this one, yesterday we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some sells. Can't see the three areas right there that Mitch had pointed out. So aggressive, conservative down here. Unfortunately, there wasn't much of a pullback on this one. The Canadian dollar pairs have really been extremely strong. And you will see that even when we end up looking at the others, as we continue to do the analysis, there wasn't much in terms of pullbacks. And you can see that the Great British Pound was really getting hammered right here. Not really much pullbacks. And of course, moving into today, not really something that we'll be watching out for. Maybe unless if the Great British Pound does end up shifting sides, maybe during the US session, maybe we could potentially try and see. But in case you did end up getting any trades on that, especially any of the card pairs, I would advise you to possibly keep on holding, because the cards are really moving. You could find that by just holding on, you could really end up getting a lot of reward. So that's just a heads up for guys. So moving on into the next one, this is the Great British Pound against the New Zealand dollar. So for this one, yesterday, trying to see whether we could get some sells. Can't see the three regions that we did have, aggressive, conservative, semi-aggressive, conservative within there. In the morning, when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within here. Wasn't really a good time to look for the sells, because you couldn't really have been able to anticipate what would have happened here. But of course, once the market broke to the downside, the pullbacks came in. You can see that the wicks were just coming in shy of this area. But of course, any sells within that area, not too bad. And of course, maybe targeting somewhere down within this region. But unfortunately, moving into the London session, not really something we'll be focusing on. But remember that any of these GBP pairs that we're watching out for could easily end up jumping back onto the watch list during the US session if the fundamentals do end up telling us so. So last but not least, we do have the Great British Pound against the Australian dollar. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some sells, and you can see the three regions right there that Mitch had pointed out. So in the morning, price was somewhere within this region right here. Broke to the downside during the London session at around 10. You can see the market pulling back in within there real quick. And after that, you can see that the market did continue moving to the downside. This was at around lunch hour or thereabouts. And you can see that after that, the market really continued to move down, more or less in a very choppy manner, moving into today. But ideally, at least in terms of the market coming down, not too bad. Of course, not really the best and the clearest of opportunities, but nonetheless, at least it still was an opportunity. So before we move on into today's currency pairs. Just want to highlight one screenshot we did get. In fact, the first one that we've gotten, and shout out to Claire if you're here. Of course, one of our top one-on-one students. Good to see that you're still in the game. Good to see you back in the game. So I see that you did get a good trade on the euro against the Canadian dollar, which is good. Good sell right there. Hopefully when the market did pull back in within there, maybe that's where you got the sell, or that's where you got in on the sell, which was really good. Quite a professional entry, if I do say so. Stop loss already below your point of entry. And of course, as the market was moving down, definitely can't see that the market, you definitely brought your stop loss low and just making sure. And I think I pointed out, in case you're still hanging on to this trade, Claire, maybe you could potentially end up still hanging on to it. Just make sure that you keep moving your stop losses lower and lower, because the Canadian dollar pairs are really showing a lot of strength, and it seems like the big boys are really buying the Canadian dollar. So this was a really good trade. So shout out to you, Claire, and of course, congratulations on being the first one to send in a screenshot. So guys, if you do get any trades based on the things that we do discuss here, feel free to send in your screenshots. Us guys would be more than happy to see that the information that we're giving you is actually going into good use. So make sure that you do send them into us via WhatsApp. Our contact details should be there on the chat box, put there by our team. So I guess we can end up moving on into what we should be anticipating today. So hopefully you've taken a screenshot of this. So the first currency pairs that we're going to be looking at the Canadian dollar pairs. So we'll start off with the Canadian dollar against the Japanese yen. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. You can see the three areas right there that Mitch had pointed out. So aggressive, conservative, semi-aggressive, conservative, somewhere within here. In the morning when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within this area right here. It broke to the upside. Unfortunately, there wasn't much of a pullback apart from this one right here, but possibly there was some sort of an SNR, maybe somewhere within this area right here. But you can see that off that area, somewhere within here, the market continued to move to the upside. And this goes to show even exactly what I was saying in terms of the Canadian dollar pairs showing a lot of strength. You can't see any pullbacks really coming in, but also the yen pairs are showing a lot of weakness. Like for this one, you can really tell that the yen pairs are really getting hammered, especially when you see currency pairs not really giving much in terms of pullbacks. Then it generally means that there is no fighting strength in terms of that currency pair trying to fight back. So you can generally see that the market is just moving and inching up higher and higher. So such type of trades can be hard to get, especially when it's a weak currency pair versus a strong currency pair. But we will be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities within these three areas right here. Let's see if at least the Canadian dollar pair or the yen pairs rather can end up showing a bit of strength and potentially end up giving us some sort of pullbacks, maybe back within these regions right here. Then we'll definitely be watching out to see whether we can get some buying opportunities there. So do watch out for that. In terms of looking for the buying opportunities here, just be a bit patient. Maybe wait and see if you could get the market breaking to the upside, maybe some sort of a small hold. Wait and see what type of pullback you could potentially end up getting in within this region right here, and then maybe try and see whether you could get the buy. But also have it at the back of your mind that sometimes getting these high buys can also be quite risky, because of course the big boys who got in on the buys when the prices were much lower are also possibly looking to come out, especially as the market is getting in or getting up higher and higher. So just make sure that you don't end up being the one who they're handing over their trades to, and then you have to end up struggling the rest of the way going up, and you might find that the market has already hit some sort of a ceiling at the top. So just make sure that you do end up having that at the back of your mind. Be a bit careful. It doesn't mean that the opportunities are not there. They are. But also don't be too optimistic in terms of taking those buys, possibly trying to take the market up higher, because the market is potentially already getting to some sort of ceiling to the upside. So moving on into the next one. This is the US dollar against the Canadian dollar. So for this one yesterday, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. Remember that we're buying the Canadian dollar. For the guys who are new to trading, remember that for this one, the Canadian dollar is to the right. So it's the counter currency pair. And the first one, it was the base currency pair. So for this one, it's the inverse of the other one. So by selling the US dollar, we're automatically buying the Canadian dollar, which is exactly what we should be doing. So make sure that you have that in mind and don't get confused. So For this one, yesterday we're watching out for sells. You can see the three regions right there that Mitch had pointed out. In the morning, price was more or less somewhere within here. In the whole of the London session, price was within this area. Market came back in. You can't see that at exactly 3. And these are the times that we keep on pointing out. 10, 3, and 4:30. You can definitely find some good trading opportunities at that time. So even if your timing and your entries are not really that good, at least if you end up watching out for those times, where is the market? Is it within an area where we do have buyers or sellers and potentially end up taking buys, within buyers regions, at those stipulated times, there's a possibility you could end up getting away with a trade. So it's not like an easy way to trade because trading is not easy, but ideally if you end up using that, it increases the chances and the likelihood of your trades working out. Because remember that when it comes to trading, it's a game and of probabilities. So you always want to make sure that you're increasing your probabilities. So even if your timing is not that great, just make sure that you do have that at the back of your mind. You will potentially end up getting some good opportunities. So you can see that this one at 3, the market pushed itself off there. There was some sort of a probe when the market went to the upside, came back in. Of course, lots of guys were full at that point in time, thinking that the market was going to go to the upside. And that's a good thing because remember, for you to make money, someone has to lose money somewhere. So all the guys who are fooled that the market was going to go to the upside and they placed their bets, when the market came back to the downside, that's definitely the money that you'd be making, the money that they would be losing. So for this one, for today, we're still going to be watching out for sales. Of course, if you got in on the sales yesterday, just hang on to them, just manage them. But we're also expecting to possibly see if we could get some pullbacks coming in. We had this level right here earlier when we were doing the analysis with the team. But the market seems like it's breaking to the downside, but the breach is not yet confirmed. So let's just wait and see what happens. You could find the market potentially probing within this region right here. If it does and the market holds to the downside, then that's a good thing. It means that the sellers are still in control and we could find the market coming in lower. On the other hand, if the market does end up maybe doing some sort of a probe to the downside and holds to the upside of this area, then you need to hold. You need to wait because you can't quite tell what the buyers within this region are up to. They could easily push the market back in within this region right here, or maybe somewhere within this area right here. So just be a bit patient. Let's see what happens. But also remember, don't chase the selling opportunities, especially when the market is going down. Make sure that you do wait for the pullback. Always make sure that you're getting those trades on the pullbacks, whether buys or sells. That way, you always give yourself a better fighting chance. So moving to the next one, this is the euro against the Canadian dollar. So for this one, yesterday, we're watching out for sales. Good to see that, Claire. You got a really good selling opportunity on this one. So you can see the 3 areas that Mitch had pointed out. And I think, Claire, you got the trade somewhere within this region right here during the US session, which was really good. So the market broke to the downside, came back in, did some sort of a probe. And this is a good example of what I was trying to illustrate or discuss on the previous one, the US dollar against the Canadian dollar, whereby the market broke to the downside, or it's breaking to the downside. Wait and see if the market can actually hold to the downside or maybe do some sort of a probe. So on this one, wait for something similar. If you end up taking the trades right now, the main thing that you always need to ask yourself before you take any trade is where you're going to be putting your stop loss. If you can't find a clear answer, or a clear area for that, then don't take that trade. It's not worth taking. That's the reason why people take trades and they don't put stop losses. It's because they can't answer that question, and it's a very dangerous way of trading. So make sure that you always watch out for where you're going to be putting your stop loss. So you can see for this example right here, when the market broke to the downside, like on Pierre's example, if she got the trade here, at least you can put your stop loss somewhere within here on entry, because you can see that's as far as the buyers did end up getting when they pushed the market to the upside. And of course, once the market started to come in low, of course, our stop loss came in lower. So Claire, if you're hanging on to this trade from yesterday, make sure that you do end up hanging on to it, hopefully today, and maybe see what more opportunities you could get. And maybe if you do want to end up holding that trade into the weekend, you still could. But although I do advise guys not really to end up doing that, because you can't quite tell what could happen. There could be some gaps over the weekend that, wake up on Monday morning only to end up finding some good shocks. So for this one, watch out for these 3 areas. right here. Can see that the pullback is coming in nice and easy, which is good. Let's see what happens. But hopefully when the market comes in within here, let's see if we can get a sign of the big boys for us to jump in on those selling opportunities within this region right here. You could target down within this area, but you also could find that the market could give a pullback maybe all the way back up till somewhere within this area or somewhere within this region right here. So just make sure that you also do watch out for that. But remember that in case the market breaks above the red SNR to the upside, then unfortunately that currency pair will be falling off our watch list for today. So last but not least, for the card pairs, we do have the Canadian dollar against the Swiss franc. So for this one, we're going to be watching out to see whether we could get some buys. This one is a new one on our watch list for today. So do watch out for those three areas right there. For the guys who are new to trading, remember that we're buying the Canadian dollar. For this one, the Canadian dollar is back to the left. So it's the base currency pair. So it's the basis for what we're doing here. So we will be buying this. But watch out for these three areas right here. Don't look for buys right now. This is a high buy. Wait and see if you could get the market potentially breaking to the upside of this region right here. So if it does break to the upside, then we get the market coming back in within this region right here. Maybe even an attempt of the market to break to the upside. Then you see some aggressive buyers coming in. If the market pulls back in within this region, at that point in time, you could look for your buying opportunities. Because if you look for any buys within this region right here, at least you could have your stop losses somewhere within there. But of course, just make sure that you watch out for levels higher where you could run into issues with the opposite party. But of course, the best scenario would be these sellers can react. And let's say maybe during the London session, we could get the market pulling back in. Then maybe during the US session, get the market back in somewhere within this region right here. Then we could look for some buying opportunities within there. Just make sure that you manage within that area, even if you will be targeting areas much, much higher. So do watch out for that game plan right there. But also remember the red SNR at the bottom, in case the market does end up coming in all the way down to within this region right here. Still could look for buys. But remember that that region is going to be the last area where we're going to be watching out to see whether we could get aggressive buying opportunities. So I hope that is clear. Although for the Canadian dollar pairs, I don't really think we'll get much in terms of the pullbacks because the big boys really seem like they're really pushing the Canadian dollar pairs. Not many of them are giving pullbacks. So don't really expect those deep pullbacks. But if you do get some good, decent pullbacks that you can end up reading, make sure that you do end up jumping in on them. So we'll move on to the next set of currency pairs. So these are the New Zealand dollar pairs, and we'll mix and match them up with everything on the sell side. So we'll start off with the New Zealand dollar against the Japanese yen. So for this one, yesterday, we were trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. So you can't see the three areas right there that Mitch had pointed out. So in the morning, when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within this region. We did need the market to break above this area to the upside. It did. You can't see that the market pulled back in, and you can't see that at exactly 3, which is during the US session open. The market did push itself to the upside. And you can't see that all through the US session and, of course, moving into the Asian session, the market has been inching up. So for this one, moving into today, we're still going to be watching out to see whether we can get some buying opportunities. Do watch out for these three areas right here. And make sure that you do remember that the yen pairs are also extremely weak. So you can't see that they're not really giving much in terms of pullbacks. But hopefully, let's see if we can possibly end up either getting the market breaking to the upside of this area. We do get a nice pullback coming in, maybe even an attempt, to break this area to the downside. And maybe that does end up being unsuccessful and the market holds above this area. Then we could look for some buying opportunities. But also wait and see, in case, let's say, the yens do end up having some strength and maybe the pullbacks do end up coming in a bit deeper, maybe somewhere within these regions. These are also strategic areas where you could potentially look for your buying opportunities. So do watch out for these two areas right here at the bottom as well. So I hope that that is clear. So moving on into the next New Zealand dollar pair. This is the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar. So for this one, yesterday, we're watching out for buying opportunities. You can't see the three regions right there that Mitch had pointed out. So the aggressive, which is still the aggressive area for today. The conservative was somewhere there, but we just brought it just slightly lower, just did a minor adjustment on that, but the level in the middle still remains. And you can't see that yesterday at a time like now, price was somewhere within this region. We did expect the market to come back in within here, but you can see that there was no sign of the big boys within this region. And unfortunately, the market broke to the downside, came back in. Maybe they were looking for prices somewhere within these areas right here, but still can't see that there's a lot of inactivity on this one. So we'll still be watching out for more or less the same areas. It's just a minor adjustment on the area at the top, the conservative area, but the other two do end up remaining. So in terms of looking for your buys, don't look for your buying opportunities right now. Wait and see what does end up happening, because right now you can't see that there's no big boy who's there. And if you do end up hitting the buying opportunities right here, this is more or less like some sort of a resistance area right now. So the best thing would be if the market can potentially end up coming up, possibly end up challenging those sellers right there. Let's see what those sellers can end up doing, because you can see that the previous time how they ended up reacting within that area right there. In case the market does end up coming back in choppy within this area and the market does end up holding above here, at that point in time, if you do end up hitting your buying opportunities, there's a possibility the price could potentially end up taking off to the upside till somewhere within that area right there. So just make sure that you're a bit patient on this one, because right now, if you do end up hitting the buys, you're not quite sure whether these sellers, this region right here could potentially end up reacting, and you could find the market coming in all the way till within here, because you can't see that the buyers have not really been interested with these prices within here, because we should see some sort of aggression that tells us that the big boys are interested. Right now, it means that these prices are not good enough, and the big boys could potentially end up wanting prices a bit lower, so you could potentially find the market coming in within that area. So make sure that you do watch out for that. But I know that some of you just looking at that could potentially end up thinking, if that's the case, then why can't I jump in on sales coming down till here? Well, you could end up doing that, but just have in mind, what the big boys could potentially be wanting to do, or where they want to take this thing. The overall direction is very important. So you could easily end up jumping in on sales, but you could find that you could easily end up getting stuck on your sales somewhere within here, and you'll end up becoming very frustrated, and you won't see the buy coming in. So you'll end up getting blindsided. So just make sure that you do watch out for that. I know sometimes guys do end up wanting to chase counters, but we always do end up recommending, and it's something that's said in the industry. The trend is your friend. The direction that the big boys are taking is very key, because it's also something that does end up helping you a lot in terms of making sure that your chances and your probability of your trades working out is also higher. So just make sure that you have that at the back of your mind. So moving on into the next one, this is the euro against the New Zealand dollar. So for this one, also a currency pair we had yesterday. We're watching out to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. For the guys who are new, remember we're buying the New Zealand dollar. On the others, it's to the left. It's the base currency pair. For this one, it's to the right. It's a counter currency pair. So you can see the three areas right there that Mitch had pointed out. So aggressive, conservative, semi-aggressive, conservative, somewhere within there. Can see that the market was more or less stuck within this region right here. And this is the reason why we keep on saying don't buy where they're sellers, and don't end up selling where they're buyers. So you can see that anyone who got in on sales somewhere within this region right here definitely ended up getting stuck. And this goes to illustrate even what I was pointing out with the previous one. So you can see that there was a real fight going on within here, even moving into today. So the best thing to do, if we're going to be looking for sales on this one, is to actually wait for the market to break to the downside of this region right here. You can see that the buyers have really been giving the sellers issues within there. You can get a breach to the downside and the market holds to the downside, maybe even some attempts to break to the upside, which end up being unsuccessful. Even better, if the market holds within there, then we could potentially end up looking for ourselves, somewhere within that region right there after we end up getting this sort of confirmation. So just make sure that you do watch out for that. Hopefully, let's see what happens during the London session, because it should be opening, within the next 20 minutes or so. So just make sure that you do watch out for that area right there. You could find that maybe during the London market open, the market could technically bounce off this region to the upside, maybe come back in within here. And then you could find that maybe during the US session, that's when the market could potentially end up giving some selling opportunities, off that area to come down back within this region right here. If it breaks beneath this region to the downside, then ideally we could watch out for sales within this area right here to potentially end up coming in within this area, which is just a slight adjustment of the region that we're watching out for yesterday. So hopefully you've taken note of that. those three regions right there. Remember the red SNR at the top. In case the market breaks that to the upside, then unfortunately there will be no trade for us. So last but not least, on the NZD pairs, we do have the New Zealand dollar against the Swiss franc. So for this one, this is a new entrant on our watch list. So we will be watching out to see whether we could get some buying opportunities. Hopefully you can end up taking note of those three areas. Don't look for the buying opportunities right now. Wait and see if you could get the market breaking above this area to the upside. If not, wait and see what reaction we could get. Could also find that based on the fact that the market is within some sort of a seller's region and the London market is about to come through. So you could find that maybe the London big boys could fast push the market down. Then you could find that maybe at 3 or thereabout, 3, 4:30, you could find the market backing within here or somewhere within here, and you could technically find some good buying opportunities. Maybe you could find that the buyers who did push the market up quite aggressively yesterday could potentially end up coming back alive, and you could find that the market could break this area to the upside. So do watch out for that, but also remember that it's also possible that the market could break above this region to the upside. If it does, remember, it's always best to wait for the big boys to do the heavy lifting. Let them break levels. Don't assist them. You know, they don't need your assistance. They have the money and everything. They're able to break the levels. Let them do the heavy work and the heavy lifting. Once that does end up happening on the pullback, you could look for the buying opportunities within that area right there to potentially end up going up. Maybe targeting even the high that they do end up reaching. So make sure that you're always giving yourself some sort of a soft life when it comes to trading. You know, many people always give themselves the hard life when it comes to trading. And that's the reason why many do actually end up not succeeding and completely end up hating trading. So make sure that you're giving yourself the soft life. Let the big boys do the heavy lifting. Always try and make sure that you're getting the trades on the pullbacks. So that's pretty much it for the NZD pairs. So let's look at the AUD pairs, and we're going to mix and match that up with everything on the sell side. So we'll start off with the Australian dollar against the Japanese yen. So for this one, yesterday, we're watching out for buying opportunities. You can see the three regions right there that Mitch had pointed out. So aggressive was down here, conservative, semi-aggressive somewhere within this region. So you can see that the market technically bounced off this region. Unfortunately, it couldn't come back in all the way till within this area right here. But you can see that during the London session, and you can see that at 10 price was somewhere within this area right here, the market broke to the upside, and it did technically almost pull back in within this area. Not exactly within that area, but you can see that it came back in, tapped these weeks right here. And this is exactly what I was talking about. So in terms of the market breaking to the upside, always wait for the pullbacks. If you want to get a trade that's has lesser risk, you know, that compared to actually trying to break levels either to the upside or to the downside. So for this one, you can see that the market has continued to inch up. Let's see if we can end up getting some sort of pullbacks coming in. And you can see that right now the market is technically within some sort of a resistance area. Don't look for your selling opportunities. I mean, your buying opportunities right now. Let's see if we can either get the market breaking to the upside of this area right here. And hopefully we do get the market pulling back in, maybe something similar to this to some extent. Or if the market does end up reacting to the downside, then wait and see if you could get your buying opportunities, either somewhere within this area right here, or maybe at the bottom, somewhere within this region right here. Remember that red SNR, that's going to be the last area where we're going to be trying to see whether we could get some buying opportunities. If the market breaks beneath that region and holds below it, then unfortunately there will be no trades for us. So moving on into the next one, this is the Australian dollar against the US dollar. So for this one, also a currency pair we had yesterday, we were trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. So can't see the three regions right there that Mitch had pointed out. So in the morning, when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within this area right here. And you can see that the market came down. So at around 9:10, moving into the London market open, you can see that once again, the market bounced off that area quite a number of times, even during the US session, came back in. You can see that the market did do some sort of a probe within this area. In fact, quite a number of probes within that area right there. So moving into today, there weren't any clear buying opportunities on this one yesterday. Hopefully, we will potentially end up getting one today. So let's see what happens. The areas are more or less the same as what we're watching out for yesterday. So let's see what happens. Consider the market is just coming back in within this region right here. Let's see if the London big boys are actually going to be interested in this one. if we do end up seeing maybe a sign of the big boys within this area, we could look for buying opportunities. If you want to be a bit more aggressive on this one, potentially you could look for buys within here. But just remember that it's possibly safer for you to end up having your stop losses maybe somewhere within this region. And you really do need to watch out for that area right there. If the risk to reward is not really worth it for you, then you're better off just leaving it, because you could also try and end up being some sort of a cowboy on the charts. Maybe end up having your stop losses somewhere within here, just to make sure that you end up getting some proper risk to reward within this region. So let's say if you do get the buys within there, you could either have your stop losses somewhere within here. You can't see that just targeting up there, the risk to reward is not really that worth it, but you could end up trying to be a cowboy. And you see, if you end up having your stop losses somewhere within there, the risk to reward ends up going up higher. But the problem that you end up facing is that you're also not quite sure whether the market could potentially end up spiking within this region. So you could also end up waiting to see if you could potentially end up getting maybe the market attempting to break to the downside. Once it does end up coming back in, then I think you could potentially end up jumping in on trade, maybe something like that. So just make sure that you do watch out for that. If the pullback does come in deeper, then watch out for the region at the bottom right there. So moving on into the next one. This is the euro against the Australian dollar. So for this one, also a currency pair that we did have yesterday. We're watching out to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. You can see the three areas right there that Mitch had pointed out. So you can see, just looking at the time, so this was at around 9. So this was during the Frankfurt market open. The market came down to the downside. We're expecting maybe to see the market breaking or attempting to hold within this region. But you can see that there was a real struggle within this area right here. The sellers to really push to the downside. The buyers did end up pushing to the upside. The market technically did end up seeming like it held to the upside, came back in. Some sort of a choppy mess that's going on with this one right now. But you can also see that the market has turned into some sort of a range within this region. So we have adjusted the levels accordingly. So we have the bottom of the range somewhere within this area right here. The top is technically somewhere within this region. So let's see if we can get the market coming in as close as possible to the top of the range. Remember that it's always best to get yourselves as close as possible to the top, or in the top half of the range. Right now, we're more or less in the bottom half. If you end up looking for sales now, the risk to reward is not really going to be worth it. So try and get the trade coming in as close as possible as this area as you can, so that at least you can end up getting some proper risk to reward. So let's see if we can get the buyers pushing the market up. Hopefully somewhere within there. If this price is not good enough and the sellers need a much better price, we will be waiting to see whether we can get the price somewhere within this particular region right here. And that's going to be the last area where we will be watching out to see whether we can get our selling opportunities. If the market does break above that region to the upside, then unfortunately, there will be no trades for us unless the market does end up breaking back to the downside of that region. So last but not least, for the AUD pairs, we do have the Australian dollar against the Swiss franc. So for this one, new entrant on our watch list, almost seems something similar to the New Zealand dollar against the Swiss franc. So let's see if that correlation is really going to come into play. So if you see the pullback happening on one, you could potentially end up seeing on the other, and you could potentially end up grabbing both of them. So do watch out for those areas right there. Right now, we're almost near the top right there. So don't really look for your buying opportunities right now. Let's see if we could either get the market pulling back in as close as possible within this region right here. Could get some good buys there. If not, wait and see if you could get the market breaking to the upside of this area right here. Because if you try and get some buying opportunities within here, you could easily end up getting into some sort of a squeeze. And it's not really worth it. So make sure you do wait for that. Or if you could find that maybe these sellers do end up coming in aggressive, because you can see that they've started off this area quite aggressively and the buyers have really slowed down. So you're not too sure. And you should never act like some sort of a prophet on the charts. Always make sure that you do wait and read and see what the charts are telling you. You can definitely see the buyers are slowing down and the sellers came down aggressively. So the fact that the market is coming back in within this region, you can't be overconfident in terms of the market breaking this area to the upside. We'll have to wait and see. You could find that these sellers could easily end up reacting, and you could find either the market backing within this region, or maybe even all the way backing within this area right here. And you could find that the proper buys could either happen off this area right here. You could find that these buyers who pushed the market up quite aggressively yesterday could come back alive at that point in time. So just be patient on this one, but definitely the bias is to the upside. Remember the red SNR, in case the market breaks that region to the downside, then unfortunately there will be no trade for us unless the market does end up breaking and start to hold above this area to the upside, and we can visually end up seeing that, then we could potentially end up looking for buying opportunities. So that's pretty much it for the AUD pairs. So we're going to move on to the last set of currency pairs, which are the Great British Pound pairs. Mix and match those up with everything on the sell side. So we'll start off with the Great British Pound against Japanese yen. So this is a new entrant on our watch list. So we will be looking out for aggressive buys somewhere within that region there. We do have the semi-aggressive conservative region there, and we do have the conservative all the way at the top. Don't look for buys now. Let's wait and see if we could get the market coming back in within this region right here. You can see that buyers are camping ground somewhere within this area right here. So let's wait and see if we can get the market coming back in as close as possible within there. If that price is not good enough, then we definitely have another region that we're watching out for somewhere within here. You can see that the buyers did end up coming in quite aggressive off this area right here yesterday during the US session. So if prices within this area are not good enough, we could wait for here. You could find the market maybe even probing within this area right here. And if that does end up happening, then that could be a good thing in terms of the buys. You could find that maybe that's what the market needs to literally end up breaking this region to the upside. Because if the market breaks to the downside of this area, remember, lots of people are going to be looking for selling opportunities, because like 95% of traders are breakout traders. So the moment they see that and they jump in, they're not aware that they're jumping into a trap that's been laid by the big boys. And once that happens, once they put in all that money, that liquidity is what is going to be able to end up breaking this region to the upside. So just make sure that you do watch out for that. But remember, in case the market doesn't end up coming back to the upside of this area, then unfortunately at that point in time, there will be no trade for us of the Great British Pound against the Japanese yen. So moving on into the next one, this is the Great British Pound against the US dollar. So for this one, new entrant on our watch list, we'll be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities on this one, although this one is a bit tricky. Just looking at how the market has been coming down, we're really expecting to see some sort of a slowdown of these sellers. You can see that generally the market has been coming down, but based on what the fundamentals are telling us, hopefully we should be seeing some strength coming in on the Great British Pound pairs. So let's see if we can either get maybe some sort of a probe within this area right here. It could end up marking the end of, the sellers really pushing the market to the downside. So even if the market breaks to the downside, it's okay. You should literally end up expecting that. But if the market does end up coming back into the upside quite aggressively, and technically does end up holding within this region right here, then this is a good sign for us in terms of looking for the buying opportunity. So just make sure that you do watch out for that. It could happen during the London session. It could happen during the US session. But regardless, just make sure that you do end up waiting for that. And of course, when the market starts to come to the upside, really make sure that you watch out for that region right there and also this area right here. Because generally, it looks like the market has been coming down, for the last few days. So you can't end up targeting too far. Just make sure that you do end up managing, because to some extent, it feels like you could potentially be going against the overall flow of what the market is doing. But ideally, if you do end up getting a good trading opportunity, you could hang on to it, because remember that many people at this point in time are also looking for selling opportunities. Not very many are possibly going to see when the buy does end up coming in, because things are not very obvious on the charts for very many people. The best trades are always very hidden. So by the time guys are starting to jump in on the buys, the market has really moved up further, and at least you did end up getting a good price. So moving on into the next one, this is the euro against the Great British Pound. So for this one, this is a new entrant on our watch list. And for this one, we should be looking for selling opportunities, because we will be buying the Great British Pound. So let me just switch that up. So for this one, these are the three areas that we will be watching out for. So we will be watching out for that region right there at the top. We do have this region somewhere within this area right here. So we do end up getting some selling opportunities coming in. Watch out for that area. and also this region at the bottom right here. So this one is the inverse of the other one that we just looked at. So you can see that the market has been coming up. Let's see if we can get these bars slowing down within this area. If they do, then we could get some good selling opportunities. Maybe we could get some sort of a probe within that area. If the market breaks above this area and holds above it, then at that point in time, this particular trade is off our case. So do watch out for these two other areas right there. In case the market does end up coming to the downside, potential areas where you could manage your trades, and also areas where you could potentially end up scaling in for the guys who are good at trading and you know how to scale it. So last but not least, we do have the Great British Pound against the Swiss franc. So this one, yesterday, we're watching out for sales. But unfortunately, the sales did really end up working out. You can see that once the interest rate decisions did end up coming out, what happened with the rest of the Swiss franc pairs broke this area right here and also this region right here. Of course, once it broke and held above that area to the upside, there was definitely no trade for us. So for this one for today, we're going to be watching out for these three areas right here. So could find the market pulling back in within these regions right here. And you can see that even right now, this one looks like could be a good setup coming in for the London session. So you can see that the market has pulled back in within there. If you do see how the sellers have come in within this area and how the buyers have come up, this is a good sign. Potentially maybe some sign of the big boys coming in or potentially getting ready, you know, to come in maybe during the London session. So let's see what happens with this pullback coming in within here. Remember that if the pullback does end up coming in quite aggressively back within that area, then that might not really be a very good sign. But if we do end up seeing maybe some sort of choppy move, you know, maybe even a hold within here and the market coming back in, ideally, if you end up looking for buys somewhere within this region right here, at least you could end up putting your stops somewhere within there. You could potentially end up taking that risk to potentially end up going up maybe somewhere within there. So you could end up waiting for that. Don't look for the buying opportunities right now, because if you end up looking for the buy right now, one thing you need to realize is that where the market is right now, there is some sort of SNR within here, and there's some sort of a range. So that means that if you hit the buy somewhere within here, then ideally what you're doing is you're buying with sellers, and that's not how trading works. You should be waiting for the market to come back in within this region right here to give yourself the best fighting chance. So just make sure that you do watch out for that. But ideally, this one does end up looking like it could be a potentially very, very good setup. So I think that's pretty much it in terms of the currency pairs. So we've mixed and matched everything up on the buy side with the sell side. So we'll move on to the rest of the indices and the commodities. So we'll start off with the NAS 100. So for this one, yesterday, I think this one is part of the ones, oh, no, this one is still on the buy. The one that shifted is the US 30, all right. So for this one yesterday, trying to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities, although I don't know why the levels are like that. So I think could be some sort of a mix-up, but I think ideally we should be looking for selling opportunities. So I think this one should technically be on the sell side. I think it wasn't shifted on the watch list. Maybe an error on our part. So for this one today, we're going to be watching out for sales. I think yesterday we were watching out for buys within these regions right here. But unfortunately, the buys didn't really end up working out. Consider the market came back in within this region right here. Fortunately, there wasn't anything to tell us to look for buying opportunities within there and also this region right here. You can see that the market did end up bouncing off this area right here. But technically, it wasn't really the best in terms of how the sellers came in. And remember what I talked about. You see the aggression of the sellers still coming in, like on that Great British Pound against the Swiss franc that we're looking at. If you see signs like this, then it's not really that good. So you can see that for this one, the market broke to the downside. Unfortunately, once that happens, this one was off our case. But today, the bias has shifted. So we will be watching out to see whether we could get some selling opportunities on this one. So do watch out for that area at the top right there. And for as long as we're holding below that area to the downside, then technically we should be looking to see whether we could get some selling opportunities. And also watch out for this area right here. So there's some sort of a pullback that's coming in, which is good. So let's see what happens. Hopefully we do get a sign of the big boys coming in terms of the sales, then that could be something good for us. So just make sure that you do watch out for those three areas. Definitely we get the sales within here. watch out for the region at the bottom. Right there definitely could be an area where you could and you should be managing your trades. You can see that the sellers came down quite aggressively. Something within this area did end up stopping the sellers. So you should also be afraid of that. But ideally, based on how the sellers are coming, the buyers are coming in within that area, we do see a sign of the big boy sellers coming in, then we could potentially end up trying to see whether we could get some sort of pullbacks within here, some sort of a struggle, especially by the buyers, then we could potentially end up jumping in on the sells. So this one is also a good setup, but ideally you could find that this one might end up really making a move during the US session. So just really make sure that you do keep an eye out for this one. Could potentially end up giving some good trading opportunity. So just make sure that you also do end up changing this one. This one should technically end up being in for a selling opportunity. So let me just change that on the watch list real quick. So that's our updated watch list. So just make sure that you do take note of that. So we're going to move on to the next one, which is the US 30. So for this one, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities, and you can see the three areas that Mitch had pointed out. So for as long as we're holding above here, the bar is supposed to look for buys. The market did end up holding within this region. This was during the London session. The market did end up coming in. You can see the aggression of the buyers coming in, and this is exactly what we keep on talking about. When you see the aggression, wait for the pullback. You can see that the market pulled back in within this region right here during the New York Stock Exchange. And you can see that the market did technically continue to move to the upside quite well. So watch out for these three areas right here. So let's see if we can either get the market either breaking this area to the upside, and you also could technically end up targeting that region to the upside. Let's see if we could get the market coming back in as close as possible within here. There's a minus SNR within this area right here, but I don't think you really want to attempt to really squeeze yourself within this area right here, unless maybe you're trading the smaller time frames, like maybe the 3 minute, 1 minute, or maybe if you go down to the 15-second chart, then ideally maybe you could try and get some trading opportunities real quick within here. But I think it would be best to possibly end up waiting to get the price somewhere as close as possible within that area of the semi-aggressive conservative region, because ideally that will give you some proper risk to reward. So just make sure that you do watch out for those three areas right there without necessarily trying to really squeeze yourself within this region right here. You could easily end up getting stuck within that area. It can be quite frustrating. So just make sure that you do end up watching out for that. So moving on to the next one, this is silver. Now for silver yesterday, the bar was to try and see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities as well. Can see the three areas right there that Mitch had pointed out. So in the morning, when we're looking at the charts, price was somewhere within this area. There were attempts of the market to break to the upside. Unfortunately, the market was really struggling to hold above this area. But you can see that later on during the US session, the market pushed itself off this area to the upside. But there wasn't much of a pullback, especially back within this area. It seems like the market just more or less tapped back within this area before continuing to move to the upside. But look at what's happening today. So the market is coming back in. You could technically find that the market could potentially be coming back in, maybe somewhere within this area right here for some sort of a pullback, some sort of a retest within that area, which is okay. You could find that if you do end up getting a slowdown of these sellers, because you can see that they're coming in quite aggressively. If the market does end up slowing down within this region right here, you could technically end up looking to see whether you could get some selling opportunities. But ideally, remember, the main area is right there. The buyers did push up aggressively off this area yesterday. They could end up doing that again today. So let's see if that's where they're headed. Also watch out for this region right here. You also could find that maybe we could be looking for the trades down within this area, but also based on how the sellers are coming in. If the buyers do end up reacting, let's say the market is just coming back in within this region right here. And let's say we end up getting the market coming back up quite aggressively and actually holds within here, and we end up getting this as some sort of a probe, then you could technically find some good buying opportunities, potentially lifting off this area to the upside, coming back in within that area. So you could also end up watching out for that. So let's just wait and see what happens. And of course, if you do get the buying opportunity within this area, make sure that you watch out for this region at the top right here. Definitely an area that you should watch out for. If you end up overlooking that area, then there's a possibility you could also end up getting disappointed, because the market could easily end up turning on you within that area. So last but not least, we have gold. Now for gold, yesterday the bus was to try and see whether we could get some buying opportunities. You can't see the three areas right there that Mitch had pointed out. So in the morning, when you're looking at the charts at a time like now, price was somewhere within this area. The market came to the downside quite aggressively, bounced off there. You can't see that the market bounced off there. Did almost end up tapping back within that region, but unfortunately couldn't tap back all the way till within here. But there was an SNR somewhere within this area, and it seems like that area was good enough for the buyers to literally push to the upside. Maybe we would have expected the market to come back in within this region. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So for today, let's see if we can end up getting either the market could pull back in within this region right here, or you could find that if, let's say, the prices within this area are not good enough. Remember that there's also an SNR somewhere within this area right here, where you could technically also still find the market tapping back, especially if the market comes back in within this region right here. You could find that the probe that happens could technically, let me see if I can get some sort of a straight line within there. You could technically find that the market could maybe tap back in within that area right there. And once that probe does end up happening, could find that if it does end up coming back in, if the market holds within there, then you could look for your buying opportunities. So that's something that you should potentially also end up having at the back of your mind. But ideally, you know that sometimes people could think that, I mean, if we're looking for the buys, but the sales are happening now, why not chase the sales? By all means, you can. It's just a matter of having the awareness at the back of your mind when you're taking counters and when you're moving in line with the market. Unfortunately, many people don't really end up knowing when they're taking counters. So they could easily start chasing the sales, but you wouldn't see the buy coming in. So just make sure that you do watch out for that. But you also could find that the market could break above this area to the upside. If it does and we get a hold, then you could ideally end up waiting to see whether you could get some pullbacks coming in within that area for you to potentially end up continuing to the buy side. So I guess that's pretty much it for everything that we're going to be watching out for today. For the guys who came in late, feel free to take a screenshot of that. That's what the plan is going to be looking like for today. So if there are any questions on the Q&A, let me just check. So they don't seem to be any, which is okay. So I guess everything is perfectly clear. So I guess we can end up leaving that there. So I want to thank guys so much for making the time to be here with us. I know it's been an interesting week. First time that we've been back in about 8 months, but really happy to see guys are still here and guys are still in the game. So I'm seeing a quick one from Lucy Mwangi saying, hi, John. I really appreciate what you're doing, guys. I'm new in trading, and my question is, are you making more than, your question is not clear. Are you making more than 1 point where the pullback will occur? How will I know the one to pick? All right, so now I think what you're asking is based on all the things that we've discussed here. I think what you're asking is based on all the things that we've discussed here, how do you know which one you should be picking and which one you should not be picking based on the pullbacks? Now, it's all a matter of how you end up reading the story. Because remember that the pullbacks will happen, but there are very many ways in terms of how the pullbacks do actually end up happening. Because sometimes you will find the market pulling back in within a particular level quite aggressively. Sometimes you will see it pulling back in a very weak manner. Make sure that you pick the ones that actually end up giving some weak pullbacks. Because remember, when you're looking for a pullback, see, like for example, for this one, if you're looking to see whether we could get some buying opportunities, you don't want the sellers to come in within this area aggressively. Of course, technically, you could still end up looking for the buying opportunities and the market could bounce off this area right here. But remember that in terms of risk, that's not really the best trade for you to end up taking. You may take it, it may end up working out this time. The next time you might try, and that might actually end up working out very badly for you. So the best ones are when you end up seeing the market pulling back in within a particular level in a very weak manner. Those are the type of setups that you want to actually end up taking because they have a higher probability of moving to the upside. And remember, when it comes to trading, like I was pointing out, you always want to make sure that you're taking the path of least resistance. So by you jumping in on the trades when the pullbacks have come in weak, ideally there's a higher probability that those trades will potentially end up working out. So just make sure that you do monitor the pullbacks that end up coming in within all the levels that us guys are watching out for. And ideally, if you end up using that, you'll be able to, sift and know which ones you should be taking from which ones you should not be taking. That's a very valid question. And thank you so much for that, Lucy Mwangi. But also remember that we have UBC, since you've mentioned that you're new to trading. We have UBC, which is the Ultimate Beginner Class, which is the basic free course that you can also end up signing up. Ideally, we end up talking about so many basic things that can also end up helping you with your trading, so that even when you end up coming in for these sessions, and of course, as you continue to come in, you're definitely going to be learning more and more as we continue moving along. But it's really good to see you here. Also, remember that you can also jump in on the masterclass. And of course, this one also goes out to everyone. We have about 7 days left before the offer does end up running out. Right now, it's currently going for about $7,000 or $55. This offer is running up until next week on Friday. There's another program that we're bringing in to really end up boosting the masterclass, which is more or less like a prerequisite. So you need to jump in on this one. That one ideally is going to be a month program. We're going to be sitting together for a month. And we're going to be discussing so many things, for about an hour and a half, 2 hours every day, looking at the charts. You can ask questions, some sort of a small class setup. So ideally, the master class is a prerequisite, so that at least when you end up coming there, we're more or less starting off from a good point with everyone else. Not that some will be lower, asking questions that are too basic. Ideally, we'll be more or less within the same level, so that you can end up moving on quite fast. So just make sure that you do jump in on that offer. The offer runs all the way till next week on Friday. So I'm seeing Lucy, you're saying thanks. Karibu sana. I see Margaret there. You're saying thank you, John and Mitch. My week has been productive. Have a blessed weekend. Thank you so much, Margaret. Glad to hear that. And also do have a blessed weekend as well. So I guess that's pretty much it from me and from us. Want to thank you guys so much once again for making the time to be here with us. Remember, if anything is not clear, you can definitely always watch or rewatch these webinars on our social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, X. Also, remember to like and subscribe, and also share if you find the content useful to yourself. You definitely can end up helping other guys out there. So I see Bravin there saying thanks, gents. Good to see you, Bravin. And Karibu sana. So I guess with that, happy trading, guys. Hope to see you guys on Monday as you continue with the daily analysis sessions. Do have a restful weekend. And of course, stay safe no matter what you do. May the peace be with you. God bless and bye for now.